The first step is to take your product or service or your persuasive idea that you're going to persuade people to go along with, and think about 3 or 4 pro-social traits that are a natural fit for your product or service as you describe it in neutral terms. So take your product or service idea and just describe it out loud in very neutral terms. Not any salesy terms, no hypnotic language patterns. Just first describe it in neutral terms and try to find 3 or 4 pro-social traits that are the perfect fit for your product as you describe it. This doesn't have to be completely rock solid, iron-proof, logical. It just needs to make sense to you. So when you say it, it seems to make sense. I think that people that are strong decision makers will get the most use out of this product. I think that people that are proactive will get the most use out of this product. I think that people are creative thinkers will get the most use out of this product. Just come up with 3 or 4 pro-social proof personality traits that match well with your product as you describe it. Then the next step is to create a statement linking the two. Because you have this trait, I think you'll appreciate this product more than most. And just take that statement and put it inside of a linguistic presupposition. Now, you'll need to come up with 5 to 10 of these statements. 5 to 10 statements linking a pro-social proof idea that you will have identity primed in your target, linking it to your product in a vague, not a vague, but a neutral description, a non-salesy description inside of a linguistic presupposition, and then just memorize these 5 to 10 closing statements. They're not really closing statements. They're more like product description statements, but they will act as closing statements because if you've identity primed them strong enough, if you will have expanded their mental maps, when you describe the product as someone who has those pro-social traits will be most likely to benefit from, the product, the idea of your whatever you're trying to persuade them of, will be a natural validation of their ironclad, rock-solid, holy grail, prime directive belief that they belong in the top 20% of society. And this product, their purchase of their product, their believing of your idea will be a validation that they are being recognized during this conversation as somebody that belongs in the top 20%. So this is how you start off. You start off before you even see your customer. You have these 5 to 10 memorized patterns, linguistic presuppositional patterns that connect 3 or 4 pro-socially proof, pro-social traits that are linked to your product. Then when you're running through the persuasion sequence, when you're expanding their desire maps, when you're expanding their agency maps, when you're expanding their ego maps, when you're expanding their success maps, when you're expanding their ego maps, and they're talking and they're gushing and they're in a good mood, then you can drop in a couple of identity priming techniques on these pro-social traits. And these are the traits you decide beforehand. So you come up with the pro-social traits you're going to use first, then you identify those in the person you're talking to using identity priming, because everybody will agree that they have these pro-social traits. So you just need to use the 3 or 4 that work best with your product, and then you build them out into the customer. When you're eliciting their agency maps, their ego maps, whatever maps, you say something like this: you remind me, or you kind of strike me as someone who's very good at making strong decisions when others can't. Is that something that's true, or is that maybe am I imagining things? And they'll say that's true, and then you hit them with the presuppositional questions with that double bind at the end. When you have those experiences, when you can be the one to make strong decisions when others can't, does that come on suddenly, or is it like a creeping sensation? And just ask a couple of these either or questions that solidify this. So remember, the goal is to come up with these statements, these closing statements, these product description statements first, with the 3 or 4 pro-social traits that are a best match for your product. Then you elicit these pro-social traits, you identity prime them with these pro-social traits, then you come out with your statements, and it will seem like a perfect match. And when you close them, you don't really need to do anything. Just describe the product in terms of their pro-social traits that you will have already identity primed them to identify with, and then you just say, I don't know if it makes sense to you, but to me it seems like this product is a perfect match for you. What do you think? And if you will have expanded their mental maps strong enough, if you will have identified them or identity primed them strong enough, it will seem like a validation. The purchase of the product, the agreeing with your idea, will validate that they belong in the top 20% of society, and this will seem like a very natural thing to do. There was this guy named Zig Ziglar who sold pots and pans, or he was this old sales guru, and he said, you can't really sell pots and pans unless you use the pots and pans, meaning that you can't sell something unless you use the product yourself, or at the very least, you believe in the value of the product. If you drive a Chevy truck and you absolutely hate Ford trucks are your arch enemy, but you have to get a job selling Fords, it's going to be very difficult to look your customers in the eye and say, Ford is the best truck on the road when you drive a Chevy. So it's very hard to persuade someone to do something if you don't believe what you're saying. I mean, you can get away with this in the short term, but eventually you're going to have problems. So when you sell a product, you want to believe in the product. This leverages that same idea, but it's leveraging the congruence with which you say your closing statement or your product description statement with what you've already found out about them. If you start off with these 5 to 10 presuppositional product description statements and you say, look, because you're such a strong decision maker, you're going to get the most use out of this more so than other people. It won't make sense unless you've already validated that they believe they are a strong decision maker. But once you validate through identity priming that they are a strong decision maker, when you make the statement, both halves will be true. Because you're a strong decision maker, you'll say that with absolute congruence because they just told you they were a strong decision maker. Because you're a strong decision maker, you will get the most use out of this product because of XYZ features and benefits. And connecting the pro-social trait to the product is something you'll work out beforehand, so you can say that part congruently. So when you make this closing statement, it will be very, very congruent. It will be very, very believable. So think of talking to your customers as going on a treasure hunt in their mind to find the ideas that validate the statements that you already know you're going to say. So when you do say these statements, when you speak these statements, they will be congruent, they will be believable, and they will validate that your customer belongs in the top 20% of society, and that will make them super, super eager to buy without resistance, without remorse, without any last-minute resistance.